When Jennifer Hayes walked into the Dominguez estate's boardroom, her navy blue uniform torn at the right shoulder and stained with milk across the chest, cradling her 8-month-old daughter, Lily, because she had absolutely no one to watch her. Richard Dominguez rose from his Italian leather chair with one intention: to dismiss this clearly unsuitable candidate in under 30 seconds. He'd already interviewed 17 women that week. 17. All of them inadequate. Too slow. Too informal. Too broke. His new head of human resources insisted he was being cruel. He disagreed. He called it standards. But when Jennifer's eyes met his, something impossible happened. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 centuries. Richard Dominguez didn't see the struggling employee with the torn uniform and a baby in her arms. He saw Eleanor of Aquitaine, 23 years old, a white silk gown embroidered with threads of gold, a crown of rubies and pearls resting upon dark hair braided with crimson ribbons, the ballroom at Windsor Castle illuminated by 1,000 beeswax candles, the music of lutes echoing off stone walls, and those same honey-colored eyes looking at him with a recognition that transcended all reason. He blinked. The vision vanished like smoke. He was back to seeing the torn uniform, the whimpering baby, the frightened woman before him. But the chill that ran down his spine, from the base of his spine to the nape of his neck, remained. And with it, a certainty as absurd as it was undeniable. I have known this woman for 500 years. If you've ever felt like you knew someone you just met, if you've ever looked into a stranger's eyes and felt a déjà vu so strong your heart raced without explanation, then you'll understand what happened in that moment. And if you never have, this story will make you question everything you believe about time, memory, and destiny. Richard Dominguez was 42 years old, and he didn't believe in coincidences. He'd built an international hotel empire based on data, metrics, and predictability. He'd divorced 5 years ago rationally, so when the numbers of the relationship stopped making sense, he fired incompetent managers without remorse. He closed unprofitable hotels without hesitation. He was a man of absolute logic, which is precisely why, when his mouth said, "You're hired," against all logic, against all HR protocols, against the visual evidence that this woman was clearly in a situation of extreme poverty and vulnerability, the rational part of his brain screamed in panic. What have you just done? Jennifer blinked, surprised. The baby in her arms whimpered. Are you sure?" Her voice was soft, but firm. It didn't have the pleading tone Richard expected. It had dignity, as if she were accustomed to being heard, as if at some point in her life, people had bowed when she spoke. "I am." Richard didn't know why he was sure, but the words came out with conviction. "You start Monday, 6 a.m. Do you live far?" Jennifer hesitated. "I live in my car, for now." She said it looking directly into his eyes, without shame, just fact. "Lily and I sleep in the local Walmart parking lot. The security guard lets us, because I buy diapers there, but it's safe." Richard felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't pity, it was rage. Rage at what? He couldn't say. "You'll live here. There's a servant's quarters in the back, unused. It has its own bathroom. Small, but..." He stopped, realizing he was justifying himself. Justifying to whom? "You can have it, as long as you work here." Jennifer's eyes filled with water, but no tears fell. She just nodded once, upright, perfect posture, like a queen accepting tribute. "Thank you, Mr. Dominguez." "Richard." "Excuse me?" "Call me Richard." She held his gaze for 2 seconds, then nodded again. "Richard." And when she said his name, he had the physical sensation of having heard it 1,000 times before, in another place, in another language, in another life. Jennifer Hayes was 29 years old and worked 3 jobs. She cleaned offices from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. She washed dishes in a diner from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. She cared for two elderly people from 3 p.m. until 8 p.m. She slept in her car with Lily from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Then she started it all again. She was fired from her last job as a housekeeper because the lady of the house said she was too poor. The uniform Jennifer wore was old and starting to tear. The lady of the house offered to buy her a new one and deduct it from her salary in 6 installments. Jennifer refused because she needed the full amount for diapers and milk. The lady of the house fired her for a lack of professional presentation. Jennifer kept the torn uniform. It was the only one she had. And when she saw the job posting at the Dominguez estate, she put on that uniform. Picked Lily up because the neighbor who watched her for free disappeared without notice, and went to the interview expecting to be humiliated and dismissed. Instead, she was hired and given housing. That night, when she put Lily to sleep in the makeshift crib made from towel-lined drawers in the servants' quarters that smelled of lavender and had clean sheets and a screened window, Jennifer cried silently for the first time in 8 months, not from sadness, from something she couldn't name, something akin to recognition, like returning home after 500 years lost. The first 2 weeks were strange. Richard Dominguez had a habit of working late in the office on the 3rd floor of the estate. Around 11 p.m., he would come down to get coffee, and always. He found Jennifer cleaning something. She cleaned with a method, not like the other housekeepers he'd had. She cleaned like someone performing a ritual, precise movements, nothing wasted, and the posture, always upright, even squatting to clean baseboards. Her back remained straight, chin lifted. On the 5th night, Richard stopped in the doorway of the dining room and simply watched. Jennifer was arranging flowers in a crystal vase. Red roses the gardener had left that morning. She arranged them in a specific pattern. 3 tall roses in the center, 5 medium ones in a circle around them, 7 low ones on the edge. She rotated the vase with each insertion, checked angles with a critical eye. When she finished, she took a step back and tilted her head, satisfied. Richard felt a chill. That arrangement. He'd seen that arrangement before. Where? Did you learn that? He asked, his voice husky. Jennifer turned, surprised. She hadn't seen him there. Learn what, Mr. Richard? The arrangement of the flowers. It's specific. She looked at the vase, confused. I don't know, I just felt it should be like this. Is it wrong? No, it's perfect. Ancient, but perfect. Jennifer smiled slightly. My grandmother used to say I had an old soul, that I'd lived before. Richard froze. She too? What? Nothing. He turned to leave, then stopped. Jennifer. Yes, she replied tentatively. Do you have a birthmark? He blurted out. The question came out of nowhere. Invasive. Inappropriate. He fully expected her to be offended. Instead, she raised her right wrist and pulled up the sleeve of her torn uniform. I do, she said softly. Here. People say it looks like a crown. Richard crossed the room in 4 long strides. He took her hand before he could stop himself, before he could even think. The touch was electric. They both gasped. But Richard didn't let go. He looked down at her wrist, and he saw it, a light brown birthmark. The shape was unmistakable. 3 points. A circular base, a stylized crown, exactly as he had dreamt it the night before, and the night before that, and every night since he'd met her. How do you, he whispered, almost breathless. When did you get this? I was born with it. Jennifer stared at his hand holding hers. You're trembling. He was. He dropped her hand as if it burned him. I'm sorry, He stumbled back. You remind me of someone. Someone from where? Richard looked into her honey-colored eyes, and he almost told her the absurd truth. From Windsor Castle. From 1525. From a life I didn't live. But I can remember it when I look at you. Instead, he said, Good night, Jennifer. And he practically ran up the stairs. That night, at 3 in the morning, Richard Dominguez sat on the floor of his office, laptop open, and 15 research tabs open, all about the same thing. Birthmarks shaped like crowns. English royalty. 16th century. Tudor princesses. 1500–1550. Windsor Castle. History. Reincarnation. He was losing his mind. He was sure of it. But when he typed Eleanor of Aquitaine sat 1525 and pressed enter, what appeared on the screen made his heart stop. A single result. An academic article from 1987. Yale University. A doctoral thesis in medieval history. Title: Forgotten Women of the Court of King Henry VIII, the Case of Princess Eleanor of Aquitaine and the Scandal of 1525. Richard clicked. The thesis was 240 pages long. He read the first 10 without breathing. Princess Eleanor of Aquitaine, born in 1502, daughter of King John II, one of the smaller but prestigious courts within the English monarchy, betrothed to Duke Frederick von Habsburg at 16, as part of an alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and England. The marriage was postponed 7 times for undocumented reasons. In March of 1525, at the age of 23, the princess was finally to be wed. The ceremony was scheduled for March 4th at Windsor Castle. On the night of March 3rd, the princess disappeared from the palace. She was found 30 hours later in a tavern 50 miles from Windsor, accompanied by Jack Smith, a personal servant promoted to Royal Guard 3 years prior after saving her life from a poisoning attempt. Both were captured, taken back to Windsor. The royal edict was clear: treason against the crown, conspiracy to break an international alliance. Jack Smith was executed by beheading on March 8, 1525, in the public square at Windsor. Princess Eleanor of Aquitaine was sent to a convent of the Sisters of Mercy for perpetual penance. She died 3 months later. The death certificate recorded death by voluntary starvation. Richard Dominguez closed the laptop with a trembling hand. He grabbed his phone. He dialed the number he only called in emergencies. It was answered on the 5th ring. A sleepy, gravelly voice said, "This is Father Michael. If this is a spiritual emergency, speak. If you're asking for donations, call after 9. Father, it's me. Richard." Silence. Richard Dominguez, do you know what time it is? 3:27 in the morning. A deep sigh on the other end. What's wrong? Did someone die? No. Richard looked out the office window. Down below, the light in the servants' quarters was still on. I think someone came back. Father Michael was silent for 5 seconds. Then he said simply, "I'll be there in 40 minutes. Make strong coffee." And he hung up. Richard went down to the kitchen 20 minutes later. He made coffee in a French press. He took out 2 china cups. He sat at the mahogany dining table for 12 and waited alone in the semi-darkness. He didn't notice when Jennifer entered the kitchen. "You're not asleep," she said softly. He turned. She was in simple pajamas, grey sweatpants and a white t-shirt. Her hair was down, no makeup, and yet, Richard saw, for a second, the ruby crown. He blinked. The crown vanished. "Work," he lied. Jennifer looked at the French press. "May I?" "Of course." She poured coffee into one of the cups. She took a sip. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears. "You make coffee like..." She stopped. "Like someone I used to know." "Who?" "I don't know." She wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm sorry. I have these moments since I got here. Like I remember things that never happened." "Like what?" She hesitated. "You'll think I'm crazy." "I won't." Jennifer took a deep breath. "I dreamt about you. Before I met you, 3 weeks before the interview, I dreamt you were wearing armor, and that you died in my arms, and I swore I'd find you again." Richard dropped his cup. It shattered on the floor into a dozen pieces. But neither of them moved to pick up the shards. They just stared at each other across the mahogany table, separated by 500 years, and the impossible, until the doorbell rang. Father Michael had arrived. Father Michael Mendoza was 68 years old. He held a doctorate in theology from the Gregorian University in Rome and a second doctorate in medieval history from Yale University. He had been Richard's spiritual advisor since he was 16. Shortly after his father's death in a car accident, Richard trusted 3 people in the whole world. Father Michael was one of them. That's why, when he opened the door and saw the priest's face at 4:10 in the morning, he didn't need to explain much. "You're pale." Father Michael walked in without ceremony. "It smells like burnt coffee and existential despair. Where's the spiritual emergency?" Richard pointed to the kitchen. Father Michael walked over there. He stopped in the doorway. Jennifer was crouched down, picking up the shards of china from the floor. When she looked up and saw the priest, she froze. She just looked at him with those honey-colored eyes. And Father Michael, a man of unwavering faith and equally solid academic skepticism, felt a chill run down his spine. "Good morning," he said carefully. "I'm Father Michael. You are?" "Jennifer." She stood up, holding the shards in one hand. "Jennifer Hayes, I work here." "A pleasure, Miss Hayes." The priest looked at Richard. "Can I speak with you? In private?" Richard nodded. "Jennifer, you can. Rest. It's very early." She hesitated. She looked at the 2 men. Then she nodded and left the kitchen in silence. When his footsteps faded down the hall, Father Michael turned to Richard. "She has the eyes of Eleanor." Richard felt the floor fall away beneath his feet. You saw it too." Father Michael walked to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down heavily. "Richard, I've spent 40 years studying the history of the Catholic Church in Europe during the Middle Ages. 15 of those years were specifically focused on the court of Henry II and the regional courts of England and France. I wrote my doctoral thesis on religious iconography in portraits of European royalty between 1150 and 1200. And there are exactly 3 known portraits of Eleanor of Aquitaine. One is in the Louvre in Paris, another at the Vatican, the third in the Tower of London. I've seen them all personally, studied every brushstroke, every detail." Father Michael stared intently at Richard. "That woman has her face. Not similar. Identical." Richard sat in the chair beside him. He recounted everything: the vision at their first meeting, the dreams, the birthmark, the flower arrangement, the 3 a.m. research, the academic thesis, and her dream that I died in armor in her arms. When he finished, Father Michael remained silent for a full 2 minutes. Then he said simply, "I need to see the flower arrangement." Richard led him to the dining room. The crystal vase was still there, untouched. Red roses in a specific pattern. 3 tall, 5 medium, 7 short. Father Michael stopped 10 feet from the vase. He turned pale. "Richard, this arrangement. I know. It's old-fashioned, but how did she... It's not just old-fashioned." The priest approached slowly, as if the vase were a bomb about to explode. "This is the official floral arrangement of the court of Henry II, a specific code used only by royalty and high nobility in the 12th century. 3 tall roses symbolize the Holy Trinity. 5 medium roses symbolize the 5 wounds of Christ. 7 short roses symbolize the 7 sacraments. And how would anyone know that today? No one." Father Michael touched one of the petals with reverence. "This knowledge was lost 800 years ago. We only know because there are written records in church archives and descriptions in royal banquet inventories. But I've never seen anyone actually make the arrangement. Just drawings, descriptions." He turned to Richard. "How did she know?" Richard had no answer. Father Michael took a deep breath. "Do you want my theological opinion or my historian's opinion?" "Both. Theologically, reincarnation isn't official Catholic doctrine, but there are debates, apocryphal texts, mystical traditions that the Church has neither confirmed nor completely denied. And there are cases, rare, documented, of people who remembered past lives with impossible-to-know details. And as a historian, I'm seeing evidence that I can't explain with science or reason. What should you do in those cases? The priest looked directly into Richard's eyes. Seek more evidence. If she is who you think she is, there will be more. Much more. Richard nodded slowly. The Tower of London. You said there's a portrait of her there. I have a photo. Father Michael grabbed his cell phone. I took it 3 years ago for research. Let me. He fiddled with the device, then turned the screen to Richard. The image showed an oil painting from 1170. Gold background, white and gold dress, a small crown of emeralds, and a young face. Hazel eyes, looking directly at the observer with a serene, yet sad expression. Jennifer Hayes could have posed for that portrait last week. Richard felt dizzy. I need to go to London. When? Today. What are you going to do when you get more proof, Richard? The priest put his phone away. Let's say you find out she is, in fact, the reincarnation of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and you're the reincarnation of Sir Reginald de Courtenay. Then what? Are you going to tell her? Are you going to risk scaring her, making her think you're crazy? I don't know. Richard ran his hands over his face. I just know that since she walked through that door, I feel like I've woken up from an 800-year sleep, like it finally makes sense why I've never connected with anyone, why my marriage failed, why I've always felt like something was missing. He looked at the priest. She's what was missing. Father Michael sighed. Then pray, because if this is real, Richard, you're both about to relive something that ended in tragedy. And tragedies have a tendency to repeat themselves. Richard was silent. Unless you change the ending. That's it. The priest stood up. Unless you change the ending. In the next 3 days, Richard Dominguez transformed into an obsessed man. He cancelled meetings, delegated decisions, locked himself in his office, compulsively researching every fragment of information about Eleanor of Aquitaine and Sir Reginald de Courtenay. He discovered that the edict for the execution of Sir Reginald still existed in the archives of Westminster Abbey, the original document, signed by King Henry II himself. He discovered that the convent of Fontevraud Abbey, where Eleanor died, still existed, transformed into a museum in 1850. And he discovered something that made him book a plane ticket to London immediately. The Tower of London was holding a special exhibit. Title: Forgotten Queens of the British Monarchy. Duration: only 2 months. Centerpiece: a restored portrait of Eleanor of Aquitaine, never publicly displayed before due to its state of disrepair. Now restored, available for viewing. Richard boarded the 7 a.m. flight without telling anyone. Jennifer sensed that something had changed. Richard was distant, polite, but distant. He avoided being in the same room as her when he needed to say something. He sent a text. When they crossed paths in the hallway, he looked away. She didn't understand why. What do you think happened? The question came from Beverly, the housekeeper of 15 years, the only other employee who lived on the estate. Jennifer was washing dishes in the kitchen at 9 p.m., while Lily slept in her carrier beside her. I don't know. I think I did something wrong. Bull. Beverly was chopping onions for the next day's dinner. That man's been different since you arrived. More human, less robot. Whatever you did, it worked. Doesn't seem like it worked. He barely looks at me now. Beverly stopped chopping, looked at Jennifer with a strange expression. You don't notice it, do you? What? The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching, like you're the only real person in the world, like everyone else is a ghost, and only you have color. Jennifer felt heat rising in her neck. "You're imagining things." "I've worked here for 15 years, honey. I saw him get married. I saw him get divorced. I've seen him with dozens of women in those years, all beautiful, all rich, all trying to trap him. None of them succeeded. You know why? Why? Because none of them made him look the way he looks at you, as if he recognized something. Recognized what? Lords went back to chopping onion, something he lost a long time ago. Richard arrived in Windsor Castle at 2:30 p.m. He went straight to the Windsor Castle Museum. The Forgotten Women exhibit occupied an entire wing on the second floor. 15 portraits, 15 women, all royalty from 16th century England, all forgotten by official history, and in the center of the room, illuminated by special lighting, protected by anti-glare glass, was the portrait of Eleanor of Aquitaine. Richard stopped about 15 feet away. He took a deep breath, took 3 steps, stopped again. The portrait was about 5 feet tall, oil on wood, gold background worn by time but still gleaming, white silk dress with red and gold embroidery, a small ruby crown resting on loose black hair, and the face, heavens to Betsy. The face was Jennifer Hayes's face, not just similar, identical. Same curve of the chin, same shape of the almond-shaped eyes, same small scar on the right corner of her eyebrow that Richard had noticed on Jennifer in her second week at the Dominguez estate. And there was more. The Infanta in the portrait held a red rose in her left hand. Her right hand rested in her lap, and on her right wrist, visible against the white sleeve of the dress, was a dark mark painted with precise detail. Richard moved closer until his nose almost touched the protective glass. The mark on the Infanta's wrist was shaped like a crown. 3 points. Circular base, identical to Jennifer Hayes's birthmark. Richard took a photo with his cell phone. Then he took 5 more. Different angles. Close up on the wrist, close up on the face. Then he read the informational plaque next to the portrait. Eleanor of Aquitaine, born 1502, died 1525. Daughter of Henry III, King of England. Portrait commissioned in 1524 on the occasion of her engagement to Duke Heinrich von Salzburg. Artist, Diego Velázquez the Lesser, not to be confused with the famous Diego Velázquez of the 17th century. Historical note, the Infanta died 1 year after this portrait, in tragic circumstances, related to a love scandal with a court servant. Details were suppressed by royal decree. Richard photographed the plaque too. Then he left the museum staggering like a drunk. He sat on a park bench in front of St. George's Chapel. He called Father Michael. "You were right. About everything." Richard looked at the photo on his cell phone. "It's her. Father, I have proof. What are you going to do? I'm going back. I'm going to show her. I'm going to..." "Richard?" The priest's voice became serious. "Be careful. Truths like this can destroy people. They can make someone question their sanity, identity, reality. I know, but she deserves to know. If I'm right. She spent 500 years looking for me too, even without consciously knowing it. Then show her. But gently, and prepare for her not to believe you, or worse, for her to believe you and panic." Richard hung up. He booked a flight back to Mexico City on the 7 p.m. flight, and while he waited at the Windsor airport, he received a message from Lords. "Mr. Dominguez, Jennifer is asking if you're okay. She said you left without saying anything. She's worried." Richard stared at the message for 30 seconds. Then he typed, "Tell her I'm fine. I'll be there early tomorrow morning. I need to talk to her. Something important. Sent." 3 dots appeared. Lords typing. "She wants to know if she did something wrong." Richard's heart clenched. Tell her no. Tell her she did everything right. Everything absolutely right. For the first time in 500 years. He sent it and turned off his phone. When he boarded the flight back, Richard Dominguez had 147 photos of Windsor on his cell phone. Portrait of the Infanta from every angle. Information plaque. Museum facade. St. George's Chapel. Convent of Santa Clara. And an absolute certainty that terrified and thrilled him at the same time. He had rediscovered the woman he loved 500 years ago. Now he needed to convince her of it without making her think he was crazy. What would happen if you found out that someone you just met is actually someone you lost centuries ago? Would you tell them, show them the proof, risk being called crazy? Or would you keep the secret and live with the weight of knowing something the other person doesn't? Richard landed in Mexico City at 6:15 a.m. He went straight home. Jennifer was in the kitchen making coffee when he walked in. She turned around, saw his suitcase, the unshaven beard, the bloodshot eyes from not sleeping. "You traveled." "I went to Windsor, England." "Yes, why?" Richard put the suitcase on the floor, took his cell phone out of his pocket, opened the photo gallery, selected the best photo of the Infanta Eleanor's portrait, turned the screen towards her. "Because of this." Jennifer looked at the screen. She remained still. 3 seconds. 5. 10. The plate she was holding slipped from her fingers. It fell on the marble floor, shattered into 23 pieces, but she didn't take her eyes off the photo. Her voice came out trembling, almost inaudible. That's me." "No." Richard took a step forward. "It is you." 500 years ago. Jennifer finally looked away from the screen. Looked at him. There were tears in her honey-colored eyes. "This is madness, because I know, but look at her wrist." Richard zoomed in on the photo. "Look at the mark." Jennifer looked. Then she raised her own right wrist, placed it side by side with the image on the screen. Her birthmark was identical to the mark painted in the portrait from 500 years ago. She began to tremble. How? How is this possible? Some stories seem impossible until you see the evidence. Some connections defy all logic, and some people will pause now. Process this. Try to decide whether to believe it or not. But the truth doesn't need your belief to exist. It just exists. Richard took her hand. Carefully, expecting her to recoil. She didn't recoil. "Jennifer, I need to show you something. More things. Are you ready?" "For what?" "To discover who you were. Who we were." Jennifer looked at his hand holding hers, and when their fingers touched completely, skin against skin, something happened. The kitchen disappeared. Windsor, March 3rd, 1525. Palace garden. Moonless night. Smell of jasmine and roses. Sound of a stone fountain spilling water. The cold of the English winter cutting through the skin. Eleanor of Aquitaine, 23 years old, white nightgown covered by a red velvet cloak, small ruby crown still on her head because she left the room in a hurry. She was standing near the fountain, looking at the man before her. Dustin Hayes, 28 years old, Royal Guard uniform, dark blue and gold, sword at his waist, his left hand holding hers tightly. "Tomorrow, you marry," he said, his voice low, desperate. "I know," Jennifer replied, her heart heavy. "To a man you do not love." Dustin's grip tightened. A silent plea. "I know," she repeated softly. Her eyes filled with a quiet sorrow. "For political gain," he stated, the words hanging in the air like a somber decree. "I know," Jennifer whispered, squeezing his hand in return. "Dustin, I know." He looked at her, his eyes searching and pleading. "Then why are you still here? Why didn't you run away with me yesterday when I asked? Or last week? Or 3 years ago? when we discovered that. Because I am the heiress, Jennifer interrupted, her voice firm despite the tears welling up. Because I was raised to serve the crown, because my father... Your father sells you like cattle to the empire. Dustin's voice cracked with anger and pain. He pawns your happiness for alliances. Jennifer flinched, but stood her ground. He protects our kingdom. She gently released his hand, turning her back to him. You don't understand. You never will. Then explain it to me. Dustin turned her to face him, his gaze intense. Explain to me how you can marry a man you've never even met while you've been sleeping beside me for 7 years. Jennifer gasped, her breath catching in her throat. We never slept together, she stammered, avoiding his piercing gaze. Not physically. No. Dustin took a step closer, his voice softer, more vulnerable. But in dreams, in thoughts, how many nights have you closed your eyes and seen my face? How many times have you woken up, crying out my name? She remained silent, unable to deny the truth in his words, because Dustin Hayes had just spoken the truth she had never admitted aloud, not even to herself. Run away with me. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently caressing her cheeks. Today, now, we have horses. We have gold that I've saved over these 7 years. We can reach Canada in 4 days. Change our names. Live as common folk. I'll work. You. I'll be hunted, Jennifer countered, her voice barely a whisper. My father will send the Royal Mounted Police after us. You'll be executed for treason. And then let them execute me. Dustin pressed his forehead against hers, his voice thick with emotion. I would rather die being yours, Deuce, than live, watching you belong to another. Jennifer closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her face, each one a testament to the impossible choice before her. When she opened her eyes, a newfound determination shone within. Prepare the horses, she commanded, her voice resolute. What? Dustin was taken aback by her sudden shift. Prepare the horses. She reached up and kissed his hands, her touch feather-light. I'll meet you at the North Gate in 1 hour. I'll bring jewels. We'll sell them and live for 5 years with the money, maybe 10, maybe 20. Dustin pulled her into a passionate kiss, deep, desperate, a silent promise of a life together. When they broke apart, both were crying, their faces wet with tears, and hope, and fear. 1 hour, he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. 1 hour, she confirmed, her voice trembling but firm. They managed 31 hours of freedom before they were captured. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun. Dustin and Jennifer stumbled back into the Dominguez estate's kitchen, gasping for air as if they had run miles. Jennifer released his hand and stumbled backward, her eyes wide with disbelief. What was that? She asked, her voice trembling. Did you see it? Dustin struggled to catch his breath, his eyes searching hers for confirmation. Did you see it too? I saw a garden, a palace, cold. She touched her face, as if still feeling the chill. I felt the cold. Dustin. I felt it. Windsor Castle, March 1525. I know because I researched it, Dustin explained, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear. That night, heiress Jennifer of Aquitaine fled the palace with Dustin Hayes. They were captured 31 hours later. And then? Jennifer asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jennifer already knew the answer. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. Then he was executed, she whispered, the words heavy with sorrow. And I was sent to a convent and died 3 months later. Dustin nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. We died, he said, the weight of their past life settling upon them. And we came back. Jennifer sank to the kitchen floor, She simply collapsed, her back against the cabinets, her hands trembling. "This can't be happening," she cried, her voice filled with denial. "This isn't real. Reincarnation doesn't exist. Past lives don't exist. I am Jennifer Hayes. I'm 29 years old. I'm a single mother. I live in your servants' quarters. I'm not a princess. I never was." Dustin knelt beside her on the floor, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm raging within her. "You arrange flowers in a pattern. That was used only by British royalty in the 16th century," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "A pattern that has been forgotten for 400 years. How did you know?" "I don't know," Jennifer repeated, her voice laced with confusion and fear. "You have a birthmark, identical to the mark in a portrait, found a princess who died 500 years ago." "Coincidence?" Dustin questioned. "It has to be," Jennifer insisted, her voice barely a whisper. "You dreamed about me. Before you met me, you dreamed that I died in armor," Dustin continued, his voice unwavering. "Dustin Hayes was beheaded, wearing ceremonial armor. How did you know?" Jennifer covered her face with her hands, her body shaking with sobs. "Stop," she pleaded, her voice muffled by her hands. "I can't," Dustin insisted, his voice filled with a newfound resolve. "Because this is real, and you know it is." She lowered her hands and looked at him, her eyes searching his. "If this is real, if we really were those people, then why? Why are we back? Why now? Maybe to finish what we didn't finish." Dustin reached for her hand and held it tightly. "Or to correct what went wrong, or to fulfill a promise." "What promise?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely audible. "The one you made, when you saw me for the last time." "In prison," Dustin replied, his voice filled with a knowing sadness. Jennifer froze, her eyes widening in shock. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Because I remember." "Jennifer, not completely, not all the time. But when I look at you, I remember fragments, like pieces of broken glass." Dustin explained, his voice soft, yet filled with a quiet intensity. "And one of the clearest pieces is your hand, holding mine through the iron bars, and you saying that you would recognize me in any life, even if I were a king. And you a beggar." Jennifer began to cry, her tears flowing freely now. "And you said you would see me as a queen," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "No matter the rags I wore." Dustin gently wiped away her tears with his thumb, his touch tender and loving. "I saw it. The first day," he said, his voice filled with a deep and unwavering love. "When you walked in, with your torn uniform, and your baby in your arms. I saw the crown. I saw the silk dress. I saw the queen, that you were." They sat there on the kitchen floor, leaning against the cabinets, their hands intertwined, as the sun rose through the window, painting the room in a soft, golden light. Until Jennifer finally asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation, "What do we do now?" Dustin had no answer, but Father Michael did. He arrived 2 hours later, with an old leather briefcase and a grave expression. "You two need answers," he began, his voice serious and calm. "I have a method. It's not scientific. It's not entirely accepted by the church, but it works." "What method?" Dustin asked, his voice filled with curiosity and caution. "Hypnotic regression." Father Michael opened the briefcase, revealing a collection of notebooks and a small, well-worn cross. "I've done this with 3 people in the last 20 years. Similar cases. people who claimed to remember past lives. In 2 cases, it was self-deception, false memories created by the brain. In the 3rd case, he paused, his eyes filled with a mixture of wonder and apprehension. "It was real?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It was inexplicable," Father Michael replied, his voice low and reverent. "The woman, under hypnosis, spoke in Aramaic for 10 minutes, a dead language from 2,000 years ago. She had a 5th-grade education and had never left rural Kentucky. There was no way she could have known Aramaic." "And what did you discover?" Dustin asked, his voice filled with anticipation. "That there are things that science cannot yet explain," Father Michael answered, his eyes filled with wisdom and compassion, "and that the Church, in its wisdom, leaves room for mysteries." Father Michael looked at the 2 of them, his gaze intense and unwavering. "Who wants to go first?" Jennifer raised her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. "I do," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The hypnosis session took place in the Dominguez Estates library. The curtains were drawn. The light was low, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. Jennifer lay on the leather couch, her eyes closed. Father Michael sat beside her, with a digital recorder switched on, ready to capture every word. Dustin watched from afar, his body tense with anxiety. "Jennifer, are you relaxed?" Father Michael asked, his voice soft and soothing. "I am," Jennifer replied, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm going to count from 3 to 1. When I get to 1, you will be in the most important day of your previous life, the life before this one. Ready?" Father Michael asked, his voice gentle and reassuring. "Ready," Jennifer confirmed, her voice filled with a mix of fear and anticipation. 3, 2, 1. Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the recorder. Then, Jennifer began to speak. But it wasn't her voice. It was deeper, more formal, with an accent that no longer existed, a relic of a bygone era. "Where are you?" Father Michael asked, his voice calm and measured. "Windsor Castle," Jennifer's voice replied, her tone distant and ethereal. "Convent of St. Clair had PD cell number 7. "What date is it?" Father Michael pressed, his voice steady and unwavering. "June 3rd, 1525. Jennifer's voice responded, her tone filled with a haunting sadness. "What are you doing?" Father Michael asked, his voice filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Dying," Jennifer's voice replied, her tone weak and resigned. Dustin felt a chill run down his spine. The truth of their past life was unfolding before him, and it was both terrifying and undeniably real. "Why?" "Because I can't eat. Because every bite tastes like ashes. Because I watched the man I loved be beheaded 87 days ago, and I haven't been able to live since." Father Michael glanced at Richard, then back at Jennifer. "What was his name?" "Richard Sterling, son of farmers, promoted to Royal Guard at 25 for saving my life. My love for 7 years. My only love in 23 years of existence. What happened to him? He was executed for treason against the crown, for running away with me, for loving me more than his obedience to the king. Do you regret it?" Jennifer's voice was steady, strong. "Never. I'd rather die knowing I was truly loved than live 100 years as property of a man who sees me as a bargaining chip. Is there anything you'd like to say? Anything you haven't said?" "Yes." Still under hypnosis, Jennifer turned her head as if looking at someone invisible. "Richard Sterling, if there are other lives beyond this one, I swear I will find you. I will recognize you. It doesn't matter if you're king and I'm a beggar. It doesn't matter if 1,000 years pass. My soul knows you're, and promises made by the soul don't die with the body." Tears streamed down her face. Father Michael signaled to Richard to be quiet. "Jennifer, is there anything else you want to say?" "Yes." Her voice changed again. It became formal, ancient, as if reciting something. And then she began to speak in 16th century English, archaic, grammatical structures no longer in use. By royal decree of His Majesty King Henry VIII, King of England, under divine authority granted by God and the Holy Church of England, it is declared that Richard Sterling, born in Stratford-upon-Avon in the year of our Lord 1497, son of Michael Sterling and Teresa Rogers, servant of the royal court, is guilty of treason against the crown, conspiracy to break the sacred alliance between the Kingdom of England and the Holy Roman Empire, and seduction of Princess Jennifer Hayes with intent to dishonor and escape. Father Michael was pale. Jennifer continued, sentence, death by beheading in the public square of London, to be executed on the 8th day of March 1525 at noon. May his soul find divine forgiveness that his earthly treason does not deserve. Signed, Henry VIII, King of England. Witnessed, Bishop Bartholomew Cox. Sealed, March 3rd, 1525. She stopped. Absolute silence in the library. Father Michael turned off the recorder with a trembling hand. Jennifer, I'm going to count from 1 to 3. When I get to 3, you'll wake up rested and you'll remember everything. 1, 2, 3. Jennifer opened her eyes. She sat up immediately. I said things. What did I say? You recited. Richard was standing now, his voice hoarse. Word for word, comma for comma, the execution decree of Richard Sterling, a document that only exists in the sealed archives of Canterbury Cathedral, a document that even I couldn't get full access to, only an academic summary. Father Michael was flipping through an old book he took from his briefcase. He found the page he was looking for. He read aloud. According to a partial record from the Canterbury Cathedral Archives, document 1525 RT047, the royal decree of execution of Richard Sterling contains the following verifiable information. Sentencing date March 3rd, 1525. Execution March 8th, 1525. Crime of treason, witnessed by Bishop Bartholomew Cox. He looked at Jennifer. You just recited the complete version of a document that only 3 historians in the entire world have managed to get partial access to. How? Jennifer was trembling. I don't know. I swear I don't know. I've never studied history. I barely finished high school. I don't... You remember, Jennifer. Richard knelt in front of her. Your soul remembers. Even if your mind doesn't know, your soul knows. This is real, she whispered. All of this is real. It is. Father Michael closed the book. And now you two need to decide what you're going to do with this truth. Richard looked at Jennifer. Are you afraid? I'm terrified, she admitted. Because if this is real, if we really were those people, then what separated us before can separate us again. Richard finished. Yes. Or, Father Michael stood up. You can do it differently this time. You can choose a different ending. How? She was royalty. He was a servant. The barrier was insurmountable. Their love was forbidden. Society destroyed them. The priest looked at both of them. But you're no longer royalty and servant. You're two free people. In a century that allows love to exist regardless of social class, the external barriers no longer exist. The only barriers now are internal. Richard extended his hand to Jennifer. No barriers this time. She looked at his hand, then at his face, and saw what Lords had seen at the way he looked at her, as if she was the only real person in the world. She took his hand. No barriers. But reality wouldn't be so kind, because 3 days later, when Richard was in his office reviewing contracts, he received a call from his ex-wife. I heard you're living with the maid. Monica's voice was cold. A poor thing with a baby. Very noble of you, Richard. Very charitable. It's not charity. It's what? Love. She laughed. Please, You're incapable of love. That's why our marriage failed. You have no heart. Maybe I didn't, until I met the right person. Silence. Then Monica said something that chilled Richard to the bone. You know I know half the board of your hotel group. You know they adore me. You know that if I suggest you're having a mental breakdown, living with a poor maid due to a romantic delusion, questioning your ability to lead a billion-dollar company, they'll listen. You wouldn't do that, wouldn't I? Test me. And she hung up. Richard stared at the phone. For the first time in 500 years, he was afraid of losing Jennifer again. If you haven't felt chills by now, if this story hasn't stirred something deep within you, maybe it's time to ask, why? Because connections like these that cross centuries, that defy death and time, should make anyone question what really matters. What would you do to protect someone you've waited 500 years to find again? How far would you go? Richard went down to Jennifer's room at 11 p.m. He knocked on the door as she opened it. Lily was asleep in the crib behind her. We need to talk. He told her about the call, about the threat, about the board that could remove him from the presidency of the company if they thought he was unstable. Jennifer listened to everything in silence. When he finished, she said only, "I'll leave." "What? No." "Richard, you've built an empire. I'm not going to let you lose everything because of me. Not again. Again. 500 years ago, you lost your life because you chose me. I won't let you lose your company now. Jennifer." "No." She was firm. "Tomorrow. I'll look for another job, another place to live. You tell the board it was temporary, that I've already left, that everything's under control. What if I don't want you to go? Then you're being selfish." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because this time, Richard, we have a choice. Not the king, not society, us. And I choose to protect you, even if it means losing you." Richard pulled her into his arms. She resisted for 2 seconds. Then she broke. "We always end up losing each other, right?" She sobbed into his shoulder. "In every life, something separates us. Not this time." Richard held her face. "This time, I won't let it happen." The next morning, Richard called an emergency board meeting. 12 people sat around the glass table in the boardroom of the hotel group's corporate building. Bethany was there, a special guest, a venomous smile on her face. Richard walked in at 9 a.m. sharp. He placed his laptop on the table, connected it to the projector, and began the most important presentation of his life. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've known me for 15 years. I built this group with you. I made decisions that multiplied our market value by 20. I've never failed. I've never hesitated. I've always put the company first, absolute silence. But today, for the first time, I'm going to put something above the company. Someone." Bethany leaned forward, satisfied. She thought he was going to resign. Instead, Richard opened a file on his laptop. The first image appeared on the giant screen behind him. A portrait from 1524, Eleanor of Aquitaine, hazel eyes, a mark on her wrist, next to it, a current photo of Jennifer Hayes. Same eyes, same mark. "This is Jennifer Hayes. She's been working at my estate for 3 weeks. Some of you have heard rumors about her, that she lives with me, that she's a struggling employee, that she has a baby, that I'm having a mental breakdown." Richard paused. "I'm not having a mental breakdown. I'm having an awakening. And I'm going to show you why for the next 45 minutes. Richard presented evidence. A flower arrangement with the royal code from the 16th century, Father Michael's testimony, photos from the ballroom at Windsor Castle, a recording of the regressive hypnosis with Jennifer reciting a royal edict, a comparison of the birthmarks, historical documents, and in the end, He showed something even Jennifer didn't know he'd obtained. Richard had traveled back to Windsor 3 days ago, in secret. He went to St. George's Chapel, now a museum. He requested access to the original archives of the chapel. He needed special authorization. He paid an absurd fee. He waited 6 hours, but he got it. The original death certificate from 1525, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Handwritten in faded but still legible ink, Richard projected the image onto the screen and read it aloud. On the 3rd of June in the year of our Lord 1525, Eleanor of Aquitaine, daughter of His Majesty Ferdinand III, King of Windsor, passed away after 94 days of voluntary fasting in St. George's Chapel. The Infanta refused absolution, refused sacraments, and in her last moments of lucidity, she requested that these words be recorded. I quote verbatim, "Richard of Santos, I will fulfill my promise. My heart will recognize you in any life. Wait for me. I will return to you. I swear by my immortal soul that I will find you again. It doesn't matter if 500 years pass. It doesn't matter if the roles are reversed. I will recognize you, always." Richard turned off the projector. He turned to the board. 500 years later, she kept her promise. She found me. She recognized me. Against all odds, against all logic, souls that loved each other 5 centuries ago have reunited. He looked directly at Bethany. "You may think I'm crazy. You can vote for my removal. You can take this chair away from me. But you can't take away the truth. And the truth is that some connections transcend time, death, and rationality." Richard placed a letter on the table. "This is my letter of resignation. If you think this makes me unfit to lead, I accept it. But I won't choose between her and the company. Not again. 500 years ago, I chose her and died. This time, I choose her and live. With or without you." Absolute silence for 30 seconds. Then, the oldest member of the board, Mr. Harrison, 72 years old, stood up. "Richard, you're fired." Richard nodded. He expected it. But Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. "You're fired from being a workaholic with no personal life, from being a man who puts spreadsheets above people, from being a cold businessman that we respected but never loved." He extended his hand. "And you're rehired as a complete human being who finally understood that success without love is not success. It's just survival." Richard looked at the outstretched hand. He didn't understand. "We voted." The old man smiled. 12-0. Plus an advisory vote from your ex-wife, who, surprisingly, also voted in favor. Richard looked at Bethany. She had tears in her eyes. "I could never make you look at me the way you look at her." Bethany wiped her eyes. "I hate you for that. But also, I envy her, because she achieved something no one could. Make you feel." She stood up. "Don't screw it up this time, Richard. 500 years is too long to wait." And she left the room. Richard stood there, holding the letter of resignation he wouldn't need anymore. Mr. Harrison placed his hand on his shoulder. "Now go get your queen and bring her to dinner with us. We want to meet the woman who melted Richard Dominguez's heart of ice. Some stories should be impossible, but they happen. Some promises should die with the body, but they survive. And some people will think this is fiction, but some people will recognize it because they've felt it. They've looked into someone's eyes and thought, 'I know you from before.' And it's for those people that this story exists. To say, 'You're not crazy, you're right.'" Richard arrived home at 2 p.m. Jennifer was in the bedroom packing her bags. She turned when he entered, her eyes red from crying. "I've already found an apartment. It's small, bad neighborhood, but you won't need it." Richard took the clothes out of the suitcase and put them back in the closet. "You're not going anywhere." "Richard, we talked. I won't let you. The board voted. 12-0 in favor of us. They know. They saw the evidence. And they support us. Jennifer sat on the bed. How? I showed them everything. Richard sat beside her. Including something you don't even know. What? He pulled an envelope from his pocket. A copy of her death certificate. From St. George's Chapel and from 1525. He opened it and read the last words recorded. When she finished, Jennifer was in tears. Did I really say that? You did. Richard took her hand, and he kept his promise. 500 years later, you came back and you found me. Navy blue uniform torn, baby in your arms. And I recognized you. I saw the Eleanor of Aquitaine beneath the tired clothes, exactly as I promised I would. They sat on the bed, hands intertwined, while Lily played on the floor with wooden blocks. Jennifer broke the silence. What do we do now? Now? Richard smiled. Now. We do it differently. No running, no hiding. We live, openly, without fear. How? Richard knelt on the floor before her. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opened it. Inside was an antique ring, gold worn smooth by time, a small ruby in the center. This. Jennifer touched the ring with a trembling finger. Where did you? An antique shop in Windsor. He said it was from the 16th century, sold by a family clearing out an old inheritance. I saw it, and I felt I had to buy it. I didn't know why at the time. Now I know. Richard took the ring from the box. Eleanor of Aquitaine waited 500 years to marry the man she loves, Jennifer Hayes. Will you marry me? She looked at him. Then she looked at Lily. Then she looked at the ring, and she said the only thing she could say, I do, for the second time. The wedding took place 6 months later, in Windsor, at St. George's Chapel, the same chapel where Eleanor of Aquitaine was married. 37 guests, half the company board, Father Michael officiating, Bethany crying in the front row, 2-year-old Lily walking down the aisle with the rings on a velvet pillow. And when Father Michael asked, Jennifer Hayes, do you take Richard Dominguez to be your husband? She looked at the man before her, saw the royal guard from 1525, saw the businessman from 2025, saw all the lives in between, and answered, in a firm voice, I do, for the second time. The guests laughed, thinking it was a romantic joke. Only 4 people in the chapel knew it wasn't. The honeymoon was in Windsor, obviously. Richard had business to do there anyway. 2 weeks after the wedding, he announced the creation of the Eleanor Hayes Foundation. Initial endowment of $50 million. Mission to support single mothers in poverty with housing, childcare, job training, and microloans for entrepreneurship. First unit, Windsor. Second, New York City. Expansion plan, 20 cities in 5 years. Jennifer was named executive director. She accepted with one condition, that half of the job openings created by the foundation were reserved for women who worked as domestic employees and wanted to change professions. Richard agreed. And 6 months after the foundation's launch, Jennifer received a call from the Windsor Castle Historical Collection. The director had a proposition. The collection wanted to create a permanent exhibit about forgotten women of the British royalty. They wanted Jennifer to be the curator, competitive salary, housing in Windsor provided, and the centerpiece of the exhibit would be the story of Eleanor of Aquitaine and Richard Dominguez, the real story. With all the evidence, Jennifer accepted. Over the next 2 years, she delved into archives, libraries, cathedrals, and estates, discovered letters, diaries, court records, testimonies from servants who were in the castle on the night of the escape. And she assembled an exhibit that told, for the first time, the complete story of the forbidden love between a royal and a guard who chose 31 hours of freedom together instead of a lifetime separated by duty. The exhibit opened in March of 2027, exactly 502 years after the execution of Richard Dominguez. on opening day. Jennifer stood before the 1524 portrait of Eleanor of Aquitaine when she felt a small hand grasp hers. Lily, now 4 years old, curious eyes fixed on the portrait. "Who is that, Mommy?" "That's—" Jennifer hesitated. "That's a royal that lived a long time ago." Lily tilted her head, looked at the portrait, then looked at Jennifer. "It's you." Jennifer felt a chill. "Why do you say that, sweetie?" "Because I remember." Lily pointed to the mark on the Eleanor of Aquitaine's wrist in the portrait. "You have that mark. And Uncle Richard." She pointed to a smaller painting next to it, an illustration of a royal guard. "That was him. You loved each other, and you had to escape, but they caught you." Jennifer knelt beside her daughter. "Lily, who told you this?" "Nobody. I remember. From before." "Before what?" "Before I was Lily, when I was someone else. Richard, who had arrived at that moment." Overheard the last sentence. He exchanged a look with Jennifer, and they both understood. Souls don't travel alone. They come back together. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Richard and Jennifer stood on the balcony of their apartment in Windsor, looking at the stars. "Do you think she—" Richard began. "I do," Jennifer finished. "I don't know who she was, but she was someone connected to us. Maybe a daughter we never had, maybe a friend, maybe a servant who died protecting us. But she was there, and she came back with us." Richard pulled her close. "Then this time, we'll do it right. Raise her knowing the truth, without fear, without shame." And that's what they did. Lily grew up knowing that she had lived before, that souls recognize each other, that true love doesn't die, it just waits. 5 years after the opening of the exhibit, Jennifer received an email from a woman in Japan. The woman said that she visited the exhibit during a trip to Windsor. She saw the portrait of Eleanor of Aquitaine and cried without understanding why. She returned to Tokyo, began to have vivid dreams of 16th century England, of a castle, of a man in uniform, of an escape, of imprisonment. She researched her family tree, discovered that she had a British ancestor from the 16th century, a servant in the royal court of Windsor. Name Isabel Dominguez, Richard Dominguez's sister. The woman ended the email with a question. "Do you believe that it is possible for souls to return in groups, that families reunite across lives?" Jennifer replied, "I not only believe it, I'm living proof." Today, 10 years after that morning when Jennifer walked into the Dominguez estate's boardroom with a torn uniform and Lily in her arms, the Souls Reunited exhibit at the Windsor Castle Historical Collection receives 300,000 visitors a year. Half go out of historical curiosity. The other half go because they felt something, because they looked into someone's eyes and recognized them, because they had an impossible dream, because they know, deep down in their soul, that they have lived before, and for those people. Seeing the documented proof that Richard and Eleanor of Aquitaine really existed, really loved each other, really died, and really came back, is more than just history. It's validation. It's permission to believe in the impossible. It's proof that promises made by the soul transcend centuries. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt like you knew them from before? Ever had a déjà vu so intense, it felt like a real memory? Have you ever loved someone with such force? It felt accumulated from many lifetimes and maybe, just maybe, you're not imagining it. Perhaps your soul is remembering. And if it is, what's the promise you made? What's the love you swore to find again? Because time might erase memories, but it can't erase promises. And 500 years might seem like an eternity, but for souls that recognize each other, 500 years is just the blink of an eye. Richard and Jennifer proved that. And their story, impossible and true at the same time, exists to remind you of one thing: some connections. They just don't die. They simply wait. And when the moment is right, when souls finally reunite, It doesn't matter if one wears a power suit and the other, a navy uniform stained with milk. The recognition is instantaneous. The love is inevitable, and this time, the ending can be different, because this time, there's no corporate hierarchy to obey, no societal constraints to break, no looming dismissal waiting. There's only choice, and love, and a promise kept. 500 years later, finally,